Welcome. My name is Kelly Riordan. I'm a classical musician turned creative entrepreneur, and this is the best platform for musicians that are looking to shape their career by thinking outside the box. Welcome back to the Outside the Box podcast, where we talk to musicians, artists, and creative entrepreneurs about their career journeys and the lessons that they have learned along the way. This podcast is supported by the private lesson business programs at OutsideTheBox.com. Spelled like Johann Sebastian, that's outside the BACHS.com. I'm Kelly Riordan, and today I'm so excited to be chatting with Kirsten Haddox. Kirsten is an oboist, a current music business graduate student, and is very well known on Instagram and TikTok with over 40,000 followers on each platform as Kirsten Oboe. Kirsten and I have become great social media friends in the last few months, almost a year, and it's just been so enjoyable to see her journey and her growth continue. What's so interesting about Kirsten is that on top of her content creation and her musicianship, she also works in marketing. So she brings a really, really interesting perspective to the table as we're talking about classical music and making decisions about music school and graduate school, and also finding your career path in music and through other opportunities. So it's a great conversation. And I also just want to point out quickly that pretty soon after we recorded this episode, Kirsten was also brought on by the Pittsburgh Symphony to direct their content as well. So huge congratulations to her, obviously, are in order. But also this episode, like I said, is just full of really great tips. I think you guys are going to love this one. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. So excited for today. I've got Kirsten Haddox with me. Kirsten, thank you for being here. This is going to be amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Absolutely. This has been a long time coming. We've been working on this one for
I know,
a little bit.
it's been so long.
Oh my gosh, we have a lot to cover. So really quickly,
We do.
For those of you who don't know Kirsten, I'm a mega fan. Kirsten's amazing. She's a musician and a performer. Went to music school and started, I think while you were in school, right? Creating content on social media for Oboe and classical music. Okay.
Yeah.
That blew up. Kirsten has like 44,000 TikTok followers and 37,000 Instagram followers as of this recording. I'm sure it'll be more when you all hear this. So that is amazing. And she's also the self-proclaimed, although rightfully so, CEO of Haddox Music Problems.
The branding.
I love it. And then on top of that, it's as if that wasn't enough. Like as if being a musician and a content creator wasn't enough. Kirsten's also a content marketing strategist. So she helps other people do all the amazing things that she does. She's also a writer and a graphic designer and is currently completing her MBA in music industry studies. So holy cow, I did in fact write that down because that was so much. Wowza, girl, how do you do it all?
I don't know. It's just, honestly, it's such a grind right now. I'm excited to graduate from my college, and then maybe I'll take a break from school and I'll just have work to do. So I'm very excited for that. So my early 20s has been all about grinding. So honestly, I'm excited to slow it down soon because I'm hitting 24. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna graduate and we're gonna be chill. But yeah, I mean, it's so great. I love working. So it's just like naturally what I love to do. But yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Well, and obviously music is a big part of your life. Of course, that's why we're here, and that's where everything really started for you. But tell me a little bit about this journey for you from just musician to music student to all of a sudden content creator, because that's a really big leap.
I know.
And where we are now is not where we started. So how did that come about? Like, what happened? Where did that start?
I know, honestly. So I'm the only musician in my family. I was exposed to music at a young age because my aunt, she owns a marketing firm and an agency, and she really loved the arts, so she exposed me to that growing up, and then I just fell in love with it. I really wanted to play, so whenever I hit 4th grade, I just, obviously I was given the oboe. I didn't necessarily choose it, but I started playing that, and then I was doing a lot of integrated stuff because my family's very business heavy, so I knew I really liked business. I actually had, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing, but whenever I was about 12 and 13, I was a hair content creator, and I didn't do oboe at all on social media. Yeah, so that was something that I was just always content creating. It was just something, honestly, not that I started one before the other. I was just very public on social media since I was young. And I also had like an editing account whenever I was 12 too. So I got really into design and stuff like that. And it wasn't music related at all. And then whenever I was choosing college, I really liked business. I really liked design. I was like Oboe. And then I got into youth orchestra, fell in love with it, and really wanted to do music. So I thought that was, honestly the thing to do. Penn State gave me a really good scholarship to do a degree there. And I could also study business, and Penn State's business school is amazing. So I was like, okay, this is honestly a good deal. So I'm going to go. And then obviously in 2020, COVID hit. So I was 20 at the time and a sophomore in college. And there was a lot of like nothing to do. And it was, anyone who was in music school during COVID can agree, like it is the most just, you can't even process what's going on really because of COVID. And that's like a whole other podcast for a whole other day. But that's ultimately how I turned on TikTok and started creating on TikTok, and then I expanded everywhere. And I just met amazing people like you and like some other people too. But like, honestly, I've just like met the most amazing people ever. And that's me.
So you started content creating at 12 or 13. What gave you the courage to start posting publicly? Because I think a lot of our colleagues would struggle to post anything now, like at any point in their career. How did you come to the decision to do that?
So me and my best friend, we both went to a very small private school. And if you went to a small private school, you can understand like when there's only about 12 girls in your grade and you're with the same girls for so many years, there's just not a lot of, friend groups and stuff and all that. So it was just pretty much my friends, and I was really close with one girl, and we found this app online. She actually found the app, and it's actually popular in the UK. It was called Trustber. I think it has a different name now. I know it's a very random, you've probably never heard of it, but it was very popular in the UK. But we got on it, and she was doing more nail art. I was doing hair because I love to do hair.
Okay.
I still love to do hair, but I was doing all the braids, all the different complicated stuff at that point. Stuff that I don't even do anymore, but I was posting about it. And I actually did a heatless thing, like wave tutorial or something, and that I think it got like 100K, and that was my first moment of, oh my gosh, like, oh, this is like kind of fun, whatever. And I was super nervous because obviously being on the internet is scary. And I remember I got my first hate comment, and I remember just being like, oh my gosh, this is insane, like whatever, and not whatever. I think I was upset whenever I first got it, but once I learned how to deal with it, I was kind of just down to content create all the time. And that was, so that was kind of how it got started actually. So,
well, the negative comments, man, that'll take you out real fast. I think the fear of that is something that holds a lot of people back. Like, what if I get a negative comment? But from what you're saying, and I think, oh my God. Well, I think from what you're saying, and I see like we're on our close friend stories and stuff. I see some of the ones that you kind of like share and kind of poke at too. Had a couple in the last few days.
Oh, but man.
It's kind of an inevitable. Like you have to just assume it's going to happen at some point, as opposed to being afraid 100%. Of it. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, 100%. Everyone gets hate, and I think I had a friend recently who was getting into content creation. She got her first hate comment. She said, "Does this get any better?" And I was like, "Girl, no. Like, you could be the most perfect person on the planet. If people see you and something even triggers them the slightest, they're gonna, whether or not like that's justified, But if you, all I tell myself is, okay, I am me, and usually the people commenting are incorrect about their comments, and a lot of it, most of my hate comes from people who aren't musicians, and they're honestly just, I don't even know if the hate's directed at me, is more so directed at musicians. So whenever I get that audience, it's just like, oh my gosh, and they say the most vile things ever, but okay, like comment before, it's not correct. So that's kind of how I deal with it.
Well, and a lot of it's just stereotypes, or even I kind of joked sometimes with clients and with friends, you could post a video just saying the sky is blue, and people would comment and say, well, I'm colorblind, so I don't think it's blue. Or they would comment and say, you're so stupid, it's actually aqua. Like just ridiculous things would come up. Or they would just attack you and say like, well, the sky's blue and that's fine, but I don't like your hair color. Like there's just ridiculous things that would come up. So I think assuming that it's going to happen sometimes feels more safe. And then also when it does happen, you're like, oh, I expected this. I knew it was going to come. Now I'm not offended, although sometimes it certainly can still be offensive, but I'm not necessarily offended. It's just kind of, we roll with it, roll
So
with it.
true. Yeah. So
Oh,
true
God.
about that, honestly. And it's also good having other peers that are content creators, because you're kind of just all in that together and you can all relate. So yeah, you're kind of, you learn how to deal with it, honestly. I mean, I can't say I look at everything and I'm not affected, but I'm pretty proud of myself for how I over time.
Well, okay, so this has shaped your career a lot. There's a lot of wild things that have happened for you since 2020. So obviously creating the content, it sounds like that really took off once you got into music school and you were creating content about being in music school. And I'm wondering, as much as you're willing to share, I'm wondering how that felt when you were in school. Was it weird when videos started to blow up, especially in 2020 and 2021, and your peers were seeing those videos and you're still like just normal Kirsten in classes next to everybody, but also there's 44,000 people following you on TikTok and millions of people seeing your videos. Is that a strange feeling?
I didn't think it was that strange. At first it was exciting. Like now I don't, whenever I don't know if I get a million views, I don't really even say it. I'm not like, oh, like walking around like, guys, look at, whatever. But I remember the first time
amazing.
I remember the first time I got 100K on TikTok, or like 10,000 likes on TikTok or something. And I remember going to my roommate and just being excited. It wasn't like like I was just like, oh my gosh, what? People find this interesting? Because a lot of the stuff I was posting, I wasn't actually trying to blow up at the time. I was more so posting because I was bored during COVID. I remember I was making TikToks about how stupid our keyboard class was remote. And every time I posted it, I was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. My class is going to find this hilarious. So I was kind of doing it for my friends. But I remember going to a roommate of mine and she just completely was downplaying it and was like, oh girl, this is not a big deal, and it didn't make me feel great. And honestly, that was something that went on for a whole year. And as I met more people through the internet and as I developed my content page, not everyone at school was super, I got treated differently, and some of it was good and some of it was bad. And I think it really showed me who my friends were. Which is just so frustrating and I hate it. But it really taught me how to filter out a lot of people during that period of time. And after college, I'm very proud of the friends that I've learned to make just as a grown woman and all that stuff. So it's really helped me mature a lot, honestly.
That's so important. I think the way that content creation and even just being a public presence and being vocal about what you're working on can expedite growth. Because there's a lot of self-assessment and self-reflection in that. I think you have to build a lot more self-awareness in order to build a platform, because people are tearing you down all the time, whether it's, people in real life that are in your social circles or the hate comments that we're talking about on socials. You start to pick up on those things really fast. Like as a kind of a funny little anecdote, I know I talk fast, especially when I'm like on a train of thought or I'm trying to get something across really fast. Oh my gosh, can I just let her fly? And realistically,
I feel like you're talking really good right now. Like it's very easy to, but
I'm trying. I'm thinking about
you're
it.
Doing good.
Always thinking about it on
podcasts.
podcasts.
I wouldn't know. Yeah, you're doing good.
Oh my God. Well, a lot of the time, and I find this especially when I'm working with clients, my brain goes faster than my mouth could possibly move. So I have all these ideas and thoughts. I'm trying to convey it. And so sometimes it just gets ahead of me a little bit, and you'll kind of hear me like start several sentences at the same time, or just kind of lose track a little bit. But really early in my content creation, I had someone say like, holy shit, like this girl talks so fast. And it kind of like tore into me a little bit.
What? And unpopular opinion, I love when people talk fast because I'm already hitting the 2x speed.
Yes, like keep it efficient.
So if someone's already meeting me there, I'm like, oh, this is good. It saves me 2 clicks of like hitting the 2x speed. But maybe that's a me problem. Maybe I am just not. My attention span is gone.
Well, and I think it's now like because people call those things out in you. Like they tell you things about yourself that you maybe didn't even want to know. All of a sudden that critique and that criticism, you start to kind of parse through it. Like how much of this is legitimate? How much of this is not? I'm sure this is something that you've worked through too. Like whether it's
Oh,
feedback
yeah.
from the internet, from friends, family, colleagues, all that stuff, you start to process it a little bit
Mm-hmm.
differently because so much more feedback is coming to you in a very honest and unfiltered way
It's
about you and how you
so,
present.
mhm.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Really
That's so
weird.
true.
But it
I
helps.
honestly, it does help. Yeah. There was a hate comment. Like, I don't even know if you would call it hate, but I mean, it made me
Mhm.
uncomfortable. But I had people commenting saying that I like vampire emojis. I actually didn't get it at first. I didn't even understand what they were referring to. And then I realized they were talking about my teeth,
Oh.
which I'm not joking. It drove me into getting more aligners for my teeth, and I saw a doctor to get my teeth like shaved down or something because I do have very naturally pointed canine teeth, but I didn't even
Yeah, but that's
know.
just
And at
awful. Oh my
first, yeah,
God.
so I even had someone, he went on, I'm not joking, every single video, and he was like, he made a comment just saying something vampire, and I kept commenting back saying, oh, what are you talking about, and
Yeah.
all this stuff. And then I was being so,
Racist.
and then I felt stupid after I finally caught on. About 2 weeks later, I finally caught on. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Oh
this
my
guy was probably
God.
making fun of me like the whole time. But yeah, I know I haven't gotten any of those in a long time, so maybe, I don't know, like whatever. But some of my friends think it's sad that I got aligners over that. But
Well, but it's interesting. Like you take some, okay, so some of it's like physical. Some of you, like maybe we can
yeah.
change teeth, but also like is the opinion of one person on the internet that you'll never meet in real life or
Oh
has
my
no
gosh, yeah.
bearing on your life. Does that really matter? And then some of the things that
Mm-hmm.
you get as feedback are important. Like they are things that you want to
Mm-hmm.
be aware of. Uh,
Yeah.
Filler words, for example. I see that as something that people will comment a lot on videos with people that say like or a lot. Sometimes people will count it in a video. And yeah, have you gotten this before? This is something I got on one
I
video a long time ago.
I'm gonna be honest, the only person that outs me as bad as anyone is my mother. She will always point it out. But I told myself today, I'm not gonna say like that much. Because I was on another podcast
Oh my
6 months
gosh.
ago or something, and I had such a good time there, but every time I watch it back, I said like so many times. So many
Oh,
times. And
but
I think I was
okay, but
nervous and
again,
excited, but
that
yeah,
expedites the growth. I don't think it's a bad thing to be in a
I
forum where you hear
agree.
yourself talk again all the time,
I
right?
know, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good to, yeah, it's good. So, and it's just, I used to do acting, so I
Mm.
shouldn't be saying it. So I don't know if it came back on. I don't know, but yeah, I understand
There
what you
is there's this great account that I think comes up in my Instagram quite a bit. He's a linguistics expert.
mean. Cool.
I think
Okay.
expert, I think that's fair to say, but he talks
Cool.
about different dialects and how people in different cultures and different groups of society kind of share different nuances and dialect. And what I find really interesting about this is he
Oh, I
talks
love
about
that.
influencers and how people who
Mm.
post a lot of content tend to start using the same language, or they'll all say things like,
Yeah.
I just wanted to hop on here. Like they borrow phrases
Yeah.
from each other all the time. And there's like this
Oh,
influencer
that's so
dialect. And
funny.
when we start to hear it, now in 2024, the general population started to pick up on subconsciously, this person's probably
Yeah.
going to sell me something. And it's
Oh, yeah.
so
Mm-hmm. 100%.
fascinating.
It's so
So
fascinating.
fascinating.
I know what you mean. I actually saw something too recently where someone said there's such thing as a TikTok accent. I literally to this day, I
Oh,
don't know if I have it, but I have no idea what that means. But an accent,
interesting.
like a literal
Huh.
accent. But I know what you mean too, because I
Yeah,
mean, I think a lot of that translates to Gen Z language too. And now there's Gen
sure,
Alpha language,
sure.
which I'm not even in on. And it's insane. And I hear it and I
What,
don't
you
even
don't have
know.
Riz,
Someone let me
Kirsten?
know. I I don't know. Skibbity, still don't know. I posted a whole video, no one could explain it. Still waiting to know. Um,
Oh my
but
God.
literally, I don't know. I don't know what if anyone can tell me what a TikTok accent is, let me know because do we have
Clueless.
it?
I don't know. If we do, please tell us. That is something that we would like to
Please
be
let us
self-conscious of.
know.
Thank you.
I'd love
That
to
we'll just add
know.
that to the things that we're cautious of every
Right?
time we open our mouths and post on the internet.
Yeah.
Ugh. Oh my gosh. Okay, so getting kind of to some of the meat and potatoes a little bit, if you will, of the things that we wanted to talk about today,
Okay.
because you and I have a whole list.
Mm-hmm.
We like
Oh, we got a whole
this is a
thing.
very different podcast than what I've done in the past because you and I talked a lot about a lot of things around music
Mm-hmm.
education, music school, music conservatory, job placement, all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And also, since we started talking about this, as we've also been kind of texting about, there's been a lot of drama
Yeah.
in the music industry
Oh,
and in music schools in the last 2 to 3 months. It has been bonkers,
insane.
honestly.
Literally a
Um,
war. A war is the best way to put it. I don't think it's been this crazy ever. Truly.
no,
Truly.
it
Yeah.
feels like, I'm curious if you are sharing this thought too. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like we are on the cusp still of something
Yeah.
really massive. We're starting to see more
Yeah.
stories come through. We're starting to see some changes. And I say that
Yeah.
obviously in reference to like the article, which is kind of what everyone's taken to
The
calling it.
article.
The article in capital letters
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
the New York Phil on that story, but also other stories have come through from that. If we take it one step further, there's
Yeah.
also been a lot of changes because it is the end of the school year. We're also seeing changes in music schools and conservatories and funding and
Yeah.
closures. There's a lot going on. And I know you and I are very
It's
aligned on a lot of our thoughts about these things, but
mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
want to dive into some of this stuff. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
let's do it. I think we should for
Okay.
sure. 100%. Yeah.
Let's dip our toes in lightly with some of the music ed stuff first, because I think that's a little
Okay.
bit
Yeah.
maybe an easier-ish topic because we talk about this a lot on social
100%.
media. How many times a week
Yeah.
do you get a DM asking, is music school or music grad school worth it?
Probably I feel so bad. I need to answer everyone, but probably I opened it up last week and I had
Yeah.
about 400. And again, I didn't read them all. I need to read them all, and
Yeah.
I really want. I need to just section a whole day, and actually, that's my worst thing. I really want to respond to everyone individually, but it's just
Candidly, that was
I
my
need to be a
afternoon
content
today,
creator
so
full
I get
time.
it. I get it.
Yeah, it's
Um,
overwhelming. It's over, but not that.
but most
Please
of those
don't. You're not
DMs are
overwhelming
about
me
this
by messaging
question.
me, but
Sure. Oh my
yes,
gosh, no, of
yeah,
course not.
yes,
But most of
but
those
but
DMs center on this.
yeah. And I've done a couple of videos and series about it. I really want to go into it more because I think, and I
Mhm.
even posted a video a couple days ago that's actually getting a lot of hate from people that aren't musicians. And my video was, assumptions about musicians. And it was, you're
Mm.
poor, daddy's money, like have fun being my waitress, all this stuff. Um, but I also, if you're on my page, I'm often talking about if you're going to major in music, you have to be so smart about it. And
Yeah.
we're going to get into the details, but there are so many things about the musical school system that I
Mhm.
think is why a lot of people have the misconception that the only path is performing or teaching, and there's not a lot of jobs there, like, which is true. So there's so many other avenues, and
Mm.
obviously the percentage of people coming out of music school, and this is the raw truth, aren't able to live, to sustain themselves, to find a job, to do anything, because music school teaches you how to do an orchestra audition or how to teach, and it works for them because people keep paying the tuition and they don't care after that. They should,
Right.
but they don't.
Yeah.
And they don't teach you, oh, you should be making this much money because you want to retire? Do you want a 401k? Do you want a house? Like all this other stuff. That's not even like a thought to musicians who are in their mid 30s that I'm seeing at this
Mhm.
point, because they're even lucky if they're getting started at that point because of how there are no jobs. Like there are just no jobs in performing and teaching. So
Yeah.
it's a misconception, 100%.
Yeah.
That that one, musicians only perform and teach and we're all poor, because that is not true. But
Right.
a lot of musicians think that is the only path, and like it's really sad because I feel like there's just so much more avenues and so much
Mm.
more ways for musicians to be successful, but they just don't push it in schools at all.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think something I'm actually looking at this data right now, so I accurately quote this. The UK Musicians
Mm,
Union did a consensus, or did a census survey. I think this was maybe about 2 years ago, roughly, and they
okay.
asked people, "What is the biggest barrier to a music career? What is the thing that's
Mm,
holding you back most often?" And it wasn't, I think a lot of our thoughts would be like cost of training and cost of education and some of that stuff.
Yeah.
44% of musicians responded that it was not being able to make a sustainable income. That was the thing that was holding them
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So
And
think of
that's,
all the talent and the skills and like the amazing music that we're missing out on in the world because
yeah.
we can't find the sustainable income. And then also, how many of those musicians just leave the industry altogether? They don't even go and
100%.
find work in marketing for music or in like retail
Yeah.
and sales and all of the other avenues that we have publishing. I mean, the list goes on and on. Online events, I could
Yeah.
list that for a whole podcast, is just potential jobs in the music industry because it's
100%.
huge. And
It's
instead, they're
huge.
going to go take
Yeah.
a job at a desk somewhere else. So they're going to go, completely work in a different industry, which is also not a bad thing. If that's what you want to do, then by
It's not a
all
bad
means,
thing.
friends, please.
Yeah. Like I
But that's so
simultaneously
sad.
do that too, but yeah,
Yes.
100 it's awfully sad because I mean, it's and I mean there's so I think income is probably the biggest one for so many people, but altogether the music industry is, I think everyone can agree, so toxic on so many levels.
Ugh.
Not only is there so many problems from when you start performing in a more competitive setting as a high schooler to being out in the professional world, there's so much elitism, so much racism, there's so much sex, like there's so many things. I literally think the music world is still 100 years behind on safety, like literal bare minimum safety for people in the music industry, which is so sad. And I mean, we're seeing it in real time. If you don't live under a rock, but it's just toxic. And I've seen the way I see certain people talk. I'm like, how do you have people enjoy being around you? Because people are just so they think one way is the right way and their way is the right way. And as they're sitting in that mindset, they don't move at all. And I mean, years and years are going to pass and they still are in the same place after they graduated. It's a lot of peaking in college and no one wants to talk about it.
Yep. Well, and it's hard because I think really skilled musicians, and I even hesitate to use the word talented because it's skill.
Yeah.
It's honed and developed skill.
Yeah.
People put all this energy and time
agree.
in. Yes. All this energy and time in music school. And they build this enormous amount of skill. And the problem that you and I tend to harp on a lot with music schools is there is no instruction on how to apply that. And the assumption from a lot of music schools tends to be that you're either going to take orchestral auditions, you're going to gig, especially for our jazz friends, you're going to gig, or you are going to look at academic positions. And if we look at the numbers there, it's not pretty. There are, I think I saw data recently, and this one I don't have readily available, so I'm probably going to be a little bit inaccurate on this number. I think American League of American Orchestras says there's around 1,600 orchestras in the U.S. as an estimate. And so if you kind of average, a lot of orchestras tend to have about 100 musicians roughly, and that's a very rough estimate because obviously that can vary widely. So let's say it's about 160,000 musicians performing. The number of those that are actually making a living income is abysmal. There's maybe, I don't know, what's your estimate? Maybe 25 to 30, 25 to 50, we'll say, full-time orchestras where people actually, get 40 to 52 weeks of services a year. That's it.
Yeah, I think I need to pull the source. I could not tell you the name of the source, but the most recent thing I've personally found was, you're right, it was 50 full-time, but only 20 paying 50K or more. And 50K isn't even enough for a lot of places. So it's really sad. And no one's transparent about that. I mean, you're lucky if you have a teacher who's transparent about that with you whenever you go to music school, because I mean, a lot of it, someone commented on my video recently that music school is a pyramid scheme. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Because I mean, a lot of the teachers, and hey, if you want to be a professor, I love that so much. And I think that's just so important. But I think a lot of people can agree. A lot of people who go into academia and become professors wanted to be performers, and they're not transparent about the scene with their students. They just aren't. And it's a reoccurring cycle. And a lot of people just go blind in and they have no idea. And they do see these orchestras that, and I think I might have talked about this with you or my teacher. I forget who it was. I definitely talked about it with someone,
Okay.
but the amount of orchestras that just don't put a salary on their listing whenever they have a job opening, it's like insane.
Yeah.
And I mean, so many people for a regular corporate job, I can get on Zoom and do 5 interviews in one day, right? And, my chances are going to be so much higher than a player because performers, so like the hours of work you have to put in before an audition, the money that you have to spend traveling, and you don't even know how much you're getting paid. People are going across the country and they don't even know what they're going to offer them. Crazy stuff. In my opinion, it's crazy. Or even if you're applying, like if they tell you in the email process, okay. But if you're even sending in a deposit, because a lot of these orchestras require like, $50 to $100 deposit to apply.
Yep.
Why would I apply if I don't know what it pays? Like, I just don't, like, the logic's crazy, but so hundreds of people do it, and there's no repercussions to the orchestra because they have so many jobs. Like, there's so many people looking for jobs. So
Right. Yeah. And it just keeps growing every year. We graduate, according to NASM, we're graduating something like 20,000 music degrees.
Yeah, we need to
that's everything.
Point that
that's
out.
Not just performance, but holy cow.
Yeah, we need to point that out.
I love data, and I did a lot of research before this episode because I want to make sure that you're quoting some accurate data. So I'm gonna borrow. You talked about the cost of auditions.
Yeah.
Now I've taken very select few orchestral auditions. I figured out pretty fast, especially in grad school. But that's not where my passion was, and I'm glad that I figured that out around that time. That was great. So I'm gonna borrow numbers from Christopher Still.
A mock one.
And it's hard.
It wasn't even real.
It's hard too because, well, anyway, this is a whole other conversation. I'm gonna pause that thought.
We'll do that later.
Yeah, the audition prep and everything. So Christopher Still, who's a trumpet player with the LA Phil, has an audition program, like a coaching program. Great human, by the way.
Oh, I think I saw that. Yeah, I think I had an ad come up.
Yes. So his handle on Instagram is Honesty Pill.
Okay.
On his website, he actually breaks down his estimated costs of orchestral auditions. He estimates, and I'm looking at it right now, so this is on his website. If you go to honestypill.com/audition accelerator, he estimates that for the 40 professional auditions that he took before he landed the LA Phil, he was spending roughly $4,000 per audition for travel, for food, for like recording and lessons and any additional music that he needed, cases, other equipment and things.
I need to like.
So no, you're fine. For $4,000 for 40 auditions, he literally says here, I spent $160,000 for 39 learning experiences and 1 dream job. Is that not the most powerful sentence you've ever had? Because think about it. LA Phil, fantastic orchestra, obviously full-time.
You can't get better.
Right.
But, no one
for those of us,
that,
those of our colleagues that are going to take the 40 auditions and are not going to land LA Phil, they're going to land something a little smaller, which is still really wonderful and a great achievement.
Yeah. And this guy's the 0.0001%, of course. Right. And he's he's incredible at trumpet.
And the ROI for him makes sense. That return on investment makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
However,
it does.
How many other people are still in that cycle or taking those auditions and are dumping money constantly into this, and they might never see that return, or the return is like they're landing a job that pays $30,000 a year, but they spent $200,000 on auditions.
Exactly, and years. People don't get orchestra jobs until about like 10, 15 years after they're actively auditioning, and I love musicians for the fact that like our community just has that drive and everything, and that you can't take. It's unmatched. Like we're just crazy. Like I have nothing else to say. But those people are crazier than me. But you're not crazy for auditioning, I would say. But like you're incredibly passionate and like so driven. I love it. Like it's incredible. But at the same time, it's like they don't talk about it. No one talks about it. And one of the reasons why I fell in love with my oboe professor at UNT is that she, during our oboe studios, she would always point out the cost too. But I think that was one of the first wake-up calls. She goes, you guys don't realize, how much money it actually costs to go to these auditions and all this stuff. And she goes, doing a DMA, for example, too. Like, if you're not going to go be professor, you shouldn't be also doing your DMA, because it's just, there's so much money that you have to think about. And I also think time is so valuable in your
Yes.
career. And that's another thing to think about whenever you're developing your career as a musician. And I really think if they taught or required more musicians to be doing entrepreneurship and things like that, a lot more musicians would be making more just doing their own business, honestly.
Yeah.
I think I teetered the subject slightly, but it's just
Okay.
so sad. And
Yeah.
it's just, again, pyramid schemey, honestly. If you look up the requirements for a pyramid scheme and think about music school, it's very similar. And it just there's no transparency at all. And it's just really sad. And I mean, we both went through it, and we're on the other end of it and like looking at it. And it's just, I wish they would just talk about it more. And I honestly, I've been talking about it more too on my platform, because I'm never here to like lead my audience on to something that, you know, and I think everyone should follow their dream, that they fully know the risk associated. Like, please go do it, you know, 100% do what makes you freaking happy. But if you just, you have to know the reality of it. And a lot of people just don't. And it's, you know, and then they're years in, they're in debt, and it's just sad. It's so sad.
It is.
Yeah.
Especially because the narrative that is spun ahead of us when we're, you know, when we're young, we're looking at music school, or you're in music school, is that success is the orchestral job or the academic job. And I think what's really tough about that is the people who are setting those standards are the professors that have held those jobs or are currently holding those jobs. So I think something we have to kind of acknowledge is that there's a lot of bias in that narrative. There's a lot of bias in what's being shared, that someone who's telling
100%.
you that success, or implying even that success would be an academic position, it's because they have an academic position and they want to feel successful. So that they kind of paint it as this peak opportunity and peak career path that everyone's aspiring 100%. To, and there's more competition to get there. It makes the people who have those jobs look better, feel better, feel more successful. And I'm not saying that they're doing it maliciously. I want to be candid about that too, and like absolutely. Give everyone a benefit of the doubt. I don't think it's a malicious thing that's happening. I don't even think it's a conscious thing that's happening most of the time. I think it's something that just because of the environment we're in happens. And then the other thing that we have to be honest about is, if you go to your professor and say, how do I start a music business? How do I start content creation? How do I record albums and sell albums and make the majority of my money on albums and touring? How do I start a private music lesson studio? They don't know, because they've never lived that experience. No, so the universities are only hiring people who have had orchestral jobs and academic jobs. They can't fill in the gaps.
They can't fill in the gaps. I completely agree with you. And I think it's a culture thing. I just think we have such a deep-rooted culture in this reoccurring thing. And the thing about other industries is that they tend to adapt to the current times. And okay, how can we, a lot of industries are money focused. I'm not saying that music ever needs to be money focused, but they do know how to make it sustainable and move on. Like, for example, in marketing, right? AI came on recently. To be successful in marketing, you know, our jobs, like, it is a debate, is AI taking away a job, you know, whatever. But I mean, I still have my job because I adapted to AI, and AI still can't be like, I'm the person still integrating it and using it and like knowing how to use it correctly. So there's stuff like that. I think the music world just like never evolved from that, and it's still stuck in this hole, and they're not reaching new people, because a lot of, and I mean, it's the whole thing too. A lot of people think that they're over social media. I've had it said in my face. I've been told not to post Oboe on the internet, and like, I'm so glad I did, because, you know, if I didn't, if I was like the third best oboist in the world, right? And I never posted on the internet, I wouldn't even be able to like touch or influence the amount of young oboe players that I have. And I mean, there's nothing that I mean, my goal as an oboe player, honestly, is just to get people to like enjoy the oboe. Like that's literally
Yes.
my goal. I'm not here to have people, you know, oh, you need to be this perfect at oboe or all this, you know, like oboe players already go through it with that like type of thing. Like all my goal is that people can like appreciate the oboe and love the oboe. Like that's just all I want to
Yeah.
do. So I wouldn't have never achieved that if I never got on TikTok, you know? So
Mm,
it's just, if you think about it that way, it's just like, and that's just the influence. It's not even, I'm not even talking about like finances or money, but
yeah.
it's just, so many people hate on those types of people.
Yeah.
And it's just, and again, I could care less at this point. I'm so happy that I
Yes.
did it. And I'm so happy that I am where I am now. Like, I'm not even saying like, these people hate me, like, like, sure, like, go ahead. I literally like, I stay there. I don't care. But I mean, yeah, it's just, it's such a reoccurring thing. And
Yeah.
I really hope it changes. And I have seen even like orchestra Instagrams, a lot of new social media people have been kind of like popping in at my page. And so I'm like, okay, all right, like we're getting the Gen Zs in there. We're kind of like, we know
Yeah.
what we're doing now. But I hopefully, like, yeah. So it's just, yeah, I don't know where I was going
Yeah.
with that, but.
No, you're fine. I think if I can jump in on that too, I think something that's
Mm-hmm.
really challenging in our career field and in the culture around, especially classical music,
Yeah.
is we all kind of toil away in secret in the practice room. And you don't put anything on stage until it's performance ready and perfect, right? You might do like
Yeah.
some mock auditions, you might play for some colleagues and things, but usually it's towards the end of preparing something.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts so much more anxiety on
Yeah.
that final performance, on that final
Oh my.
event and thing that you're doing. But then we
Yeah.
also transfer that to other areas of our career, because if the expectation is that you don't play a piece until it's near perfect or as near perfect as
Yeah.
it can be for anyone else ever, then why would you ever post your progress on social media?
Mm-mm.
And the
Yeah.
reality is, what you've experienced, what I've experienced with a lot of other musicians that you and I have befriended through the internet and have met and talked
Yeah.
to, have experienced and shared as well, is that once they started posting their process and their
Mm-hmm.
progress and making it fun and accessible
Yeah.
and like pulling back the curtain a little, if you will,
Yeah. Yeah.
people flock to them because
Yeah.
everyone's having, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of us are having similar experiences, but we're all doing it quietly.
Absolutely.
And the second
Yeah.
one person is vocal about it, you see the comment section like, me too, 100%. Yeah, that resonates. I
Mm-hmm.
feel the same. I've never
Yeah.
heard anyone else say this before.
Yeah.
Why aren't we talking about these things? Why aren't we talking about how lonely it is to be in a practice room for hours a day? Why aren't we talking about the fact that music
Uh,
school is kind of a scammy little process right now? And not, again, not maliciously. I think that's a whole other thing that we'll talk
mm-hmm.
about, is there can be changes. There are programs that are doing really great work and trying to make changes, but there are some that are just a little stuck in the old ways.
Oh
But I
yeah.
think
Oh yeah.
that culture of the old ways is
Mm-hmm.
diminishing these voices, or putting pressure on people to not post, to not be vocal.
Yeah.
When in reality, like you're saying, it doesn't matter how much skill you have. If no one knows you exist, you're still not going to get the jobs.
Yeah. That's 100% true. I know, and I think there. I hope that this does change. I really do.
Mm.
But I mean, I in no way, shape, or form fit. Like I'm not looking for an extra job, but I'm not like even close to the top 100 oboes in the world, and I'm never claiming to be, but like, I just think it's so, the amount of opportunity that can come from posting on the internet, just with gigs and with other things. I mean, and I'm not trying to make this come off as, oh, I'm this and that. But whenever I did come to UNT, I always, or actually anytime I'm in any city, I always know someone because of
Mm.
just the people that I've met. And even if I didn't, I remember whenever I moved to UNT, I had like 10 people message me like, hey, I have a party. Hey, I have this. And it's just like that type of stuff is just so nice because it's like your
Yeah.
community is everywhere, all over the world, because the music community is like actually so small. So just being on the internet, and I'm not saying that you have to have a following. I never even try to like promote. If you don't want to be a content creator, like don't be a content creator. I'm not pushing that at all. But even before I was content creating, I still met people through TikTok and met them, and I'm still friends with them. Even if I never, ever, ever posted oboe content, I would have met people. The internet's right there. And if you want to meet people, you can literally do it in the comment section and follow them back and DM them, and you have a
Yep.
friend. So if you ever feel isolated at your school and you don't feel like everyone's aligning with you, or it can be tough, honestly, sometimes, especially in smaller programs. So if you ever need someone, the music community is just so big. It's so little, but so big. And I love that about it. So yeah.
Well, it's obviously there's a lot of competition, I think, that we perceive, especially in school.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, you're friends, but you're all competing at the same time. And that adds to the culture a lot, because you all want the same
100%.
opportunities and the same chair placement, the same ensemble
Yeah.
placements. And that causes a whole other slew of issues.
100%.
But
Yeah.
realistically, I say this a lot, and I think it's an easy thing to say, but I do genuinely mean it. There is enough space for everyone, especially now that we have the internet. There's enough space for everyone.
Yeah.
There are musicians that don't perform. They just review gear on YouTube or on TikTok or on Instagram. And they are making a full-time income just reviewing gear for other musicians and hobbyists. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to
these
play,
people.
No. Yeah,
and
don't. Yeah.
Okay, like, we'll, be candid about this too. Like, you and I are not making the majority of our income performing anymore. That's
I'm
far,
not making
far,
any
far
income
from the goal. Right.
Yeah.
That is not the
I
goal
don't want
right
to.
now.
I'm like, I don't even want to. But because I
but
just
the
feel
connections,
like
the opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. And the only money I make is if I have a sponsored video of myself playing oboe by a brand. I'll have a brand sponsor it, and I'll make money. I don't even perform. I'm also injured. I will point that out. But if I go back to oboe live, I want to do it for fun, and that's really all I want to do. And I think a lot of it, I'm still in my oboe healing era. There's so much lore to that. But I went through it in undergrad, literally went through it. I'm not going to say whiplash, but it was whiplash-esque experience for me. So literally, oboe stresses me out sometimes whenever I'm really looking at performing and stuff. So I'm kind of in my healing era, and it's really nice to I don't need to rely on it for money. And I think that was a huge thing that whenever, I was never ever fully set on performance, but I always had people in my ear saying oh, you're going to waste your potential if you don't do that. Don't do marketing, don't do this and that, don't post content, just do oboe. And it was something that I was being fed all the time. So that's why I went to grad school as a performance major at first. And then I changed my major because I have such an amazing environment at UNT, and they were so supportive of that. But literally, where was I going with this? I literally forgot my point. Sorry.
No, you're fine. We were talking about the fact that performing is not a massive part of our revenue and income.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But we're still making money in music.
Yeah. So I can still do oboe. I have the freedom right now. I can play the oboe whenever I want to, and I can do it on the internet and dress up cute. That's kind of my thing now. I guess I kind of I'll put up a little outfit with it and all this stuff. Now, whatever, and it's super fun, and that's what makes me happy. I know some people that just really like to only play, and that's what I love that for them too. But I sometimes just like to talk about the oboe. I like to talk about the industry and stuff. And that's what really made a career for myself. So yeah. And it's really cool that you can do that.
Yes, it doesn't have to be one size fits all. For content creation, for a music career in general, we have a lot of opportunity to make changes and to, like I said, especially because of the internet now, the path is different. Yeah. But if we circle back to the music school issue at hand, we talked about the fact that 20,000 music degrees are awarded in the U.S. every year. That's just the U.S.
Yeah. Okay. Just the U.S.
Just the U.S. You mentioned a piece of data that around 50 orchestras exist in the U.S. full-time that are paying full-time salaries. So again, let's say it's around 100 people per orchestra. Usually at that point, it's a larger orchestra, but let's just say it's 100. Okay, so there are 5,000 full-time orchestra positions, by those numbers. In academia, NASM says there's around, and there's also a really great one sheet that I found from, I think it was from Eastman.
Oh yeah, you have all the deeds.
Ooh, girl, I researched this stuff so much. Because again, if I'm going to go on the internet and spew stuff, I'm
honestly,
going to try to be educated about this. And this is something that I really want to change. I'm also bringing this data to schools and trying to, thank you. You should see, I have a whole Slack channel dedicated to this.
Really?
Where I just post links to other articles and things that I think are helpful for me because I want to pull them up later. It's very helpful.
I need it because whenever we were talking, you were like, "Oh yeah, this document." I was like, "Oh my god, it's so useful. It's so useful.
It is.
And no one talks about it. Like literally,
right.
It's just.
I went side quest for a second. I went to a really fantastic presentation. I think this was about 3 years ago, maybe at the NAMM show.
Wow.
And it was Brian Kai-Chin, who was at, I think, Seattle Pacific at the time. And now he's, that might not be accurate, but he's changed position since then. Anyway, I digress. He was quoting SNAP data, which is a survey that talks about music career placement. Now, that data I think was published in like 2022, and that's kind of why he was pulling it. I think he was even looking at the past survey. Anyway, I digress. That was my first kind of foray into this, where I realized that people were trying to collect data on this. But what's so interesting to me is the data is hard to find. The SEO on this data is not strong. So when you're trying to just Google like how many musicians actually get jobs after music school, you're not going to find it. You really have to deep dive. So this is right. That has no
which is not true.
If I see another Glassdoor article about music, I swear to God.
Like who are they actually talking to? I don't even know.
No.
I don't know. But I have a question.
It's ridiculous.
Too. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. Is the 20,000 a year, is that just performance or is it all music majors?
That is all music majors. And I'm pulling that number. Let me go to my Slack channel.
No,
I'm pulling that number. Yes, from NASM. So NASM, as part of their accreditation, they require, by the way, NASM, if you don't know what this is, the National Association of Schools of Music, NASM. They are a body that accredits, an organization that accredits universities. So they specifically focus on music schools, and they have a set list of criteria that if music schools meet that criteria ongoing, they can be accredited as a music school, which means that those degrees meet certain standards. Okay. NASM, as part of their accreditation, requires schools to fill out what they call HEADS surveys. HEADS is Higher Education Arts Data Services. Okay, so the data summaries, these are online. They don't give you the most recent ones. They're usually like 2 or 3 years behind. I think the most recent that I can find online is like 2020 to 2021. But that's where I'm pulling that data. So it's telling us that about 20,000 degrees are awarded across everything. It's not just performance. It's all music degrees. It's all undergrad, master's, DMA, all that stuff too. Gotcha. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I still feel like it's so performance heavy because most people in master's school are doing performance.
It's definitely performance
like
heavy.
DMA, it's usually still performance focused. But,
absolutely.
Even though it shouldn't be, but that's a whole other conversation. But what was I going to say? That's just accredited though. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which, I mean, it's great data and I'm so glad that they did that. But I mean, there's so many, I went to one, I was so like oblivious whenever I was in high school, but I went to this one tiny Christian school in Pennsylvania, and their music school was probably the size of a 2-bedroom house or something. And I asked them about it. I said, "Oh, do you have an Oboe professor?" And they said, "Oh, you can get your high school teacher to come here. We'll hire her." But I highly doubt they were accredited. But I mean, there's so many. But they're giving out, you know what I mean? Like they're giving out degrees. Some schools, if you pay them, they'll make you a music degree, and I've seen it happen. So
yes, well, and what's hard, and it's hard too because I think there are a few universities that I've met with or talked to, or worked with that. They are non-audition programs.
Okay.
And I have mixed feelings about this. On one hand, my brain says, well, I understand the value for a student who maybe couldn't afford private lessons when they were younger, and they're looking to get into music and they want to learn. And so maybe their goal isn't even to perform full time, but they're looking for that education for other reasons. Like they would be interested in teaching or they want to compose. And so it might be helpful to have programs like that. On the other hand, I think it's really difficult because, again, if we're looking at programs that the placement for NASM schools, which the vast majority are going to be audition programs by far.
Yeah.
If those schools don't even know their job placement data, if those schools aren't even honest about how many of their graduates are ending up in music, then
not. There's no way.
then how realistic or how fair or how helpful and supportive and ethical is it to be awarding degrees from these other programs? I don't know the answer to that. That's just a pondering that I'm throwing out there. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or otherwise. I'm just saying there's a mess here. And the bigger issue is we really don't know what the job placement data is. We have no idea. And
it's probably it's definitely worse than what they're saying. I can definitely, I mean, that's for sure. And I mean, it's just so
if they have it all.
So many, if they have it all, I know, like, right. And I mean, I have something else to say about that, so remind me, or I'll remind myself. But I love my school, but a huge complaint from a lot of people is that my school has so many people at it, and it's so undergrad heavy. I swear I walk through my school and I usually at my old school, I would walk around and I at least recognize everyone. I didn't have to be friends with everyone, but I recognize them. But at my school, there's a new person I just never recognize anyone. I could walk through the whole school. I've been there for 2 years and I don't recognize anyone. It's just crazy. Wow. And I'm like, is there really that many like open jobs? Right? No, there's not. And it's not good. I was talking to a friend of mine and someone in the music world who got very canceled recently. One of his biggest flexes was to put on his door, I got 90 students jobs or something. My job placement, like 90 students over 30 years, but okay, you should, like, your students should be getting, you know what I mean? Why
how many more didn't get a job?
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's a thing to put in the equation, but why are we flexing that? You know what I mean? Right. Why are we flexing?
That's like bare minimum.
It's the bare minimum. Okay, people are getting jobs, like, good. You know what I mean? And I mean, which ones are full-time? I don't know. And it's just so backwards how in music school, literally a part-time, barely, 15 an hour job is applauded. And it's, I mean, and I am not saying that it shouldn't be, because it can be so competitive to get things like that, but it's why are we doing this? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Why are we cycling through this?
And it's not exclusive to the small schools, and it's not exclusive to the
it's not.
Outside of the top 10 schools. I saw a post. I don't want to, it's not the students' fault, so I'm not going to name schools or anything, but I saw a post about maybe I would say like 6 to 8 months ago from we're going to say like a top, I would guess top 5, maybe top 7 music school. Okay. Celebrating the fact that one of their players had been awarded a position with a regional orchestra. Okay. And they were so excited. The university, the music school is in the Northeast. This regional orchestra was in the South. Okay. Not on the coast. Okay. The position, I looked it up after a lot of research. I was able to figure out that position was paying around $125 per service. Okay.
Oh yeah, the per service ones get you, because
by the time this individual who won this job that the school was like heralding and celebrating, they were so excited. By the time that individual travels to play each one of those weekend gigs, and I know that like sometimes they will work out accommodations to like stay with someone else or to stay with a donor or to stay with other like kind of host families in the area. But even if we're just talking flights, they're not making any money.
Yeah. It's all experience. It's so sad. And it's this huge reoccurring process. The regional orchestra and I think because of how hard it is, they should be getting shout outs by their school. I mean, that's the least the school could do. But at the same time, what is going on here? And why is this a situation? Like, why are these, schools that, they do have a 10% or less acceptance rate, and this is the situation, and it will even be, they're posting about people that graduated 10 years ago finally getting that. Right. And it's insane. I mean, it's just so messed up, and it's so sad every time I see something like that too, sometimes I'll do the same thing. I'll, go look, and it's okay. And the per service stuff too is a whole other thing, because I have literally seen people look at stuff like that and say, oh, I'll get paid 125 per hour. No, that's not what's going on. And I think that's actually a lot of the stuff that's going on Glassdoor, saying that orchestras pay 125 an hour, 150 an hour, which it's not per service.
No, it's per service.
And then you have to calculate, oh, they have 3 services a week, or only 13 weeks in a year. And then once you calculate it, it's like, I'm not going to calculate that because I'm going to botch it. I don't even know what I just said, but but you calculate it and it's not abysmal. Livable. It's abysmal. And it's so sad. And it's like, okay, well, whatever, be cool. And I mean, I've seen other people too say, oh, well, I'll only work this much a year. And it's okay. You're gonna have to work more than that, because it's just sad. And I'm not saying that. I think because of how hard these jobs are to get, I don't think they should be working more than that. But it's just, it's sad.
It's so sad.
It's so sad. The other thing too that's going on too is one of the main comments I'll get whenever I do talk about the instability of orchestra jobs is Army band and military band and all this stuff. First of all, my opinion about it is that why are we at a point where going to basic, in most cases, is the answer for a stable job for musicians, where I don't know many musicians that would even, I hate to say, like, they're not going to want to go or get through basic training in the most part. I'm sure there's great musicians that are, there's not a lot. So there's that to start out with. And then a lot of them don't do, so what they were doing was a pre-screening, and then they'd pay to at least fly you there. But now, because of budget cuts in the military, they're not doing that. So now they're doing pre-screenings, and I don't even know I don't know if they pay like a select few still, I don't know. But now it's an open audition. So even if you don't pass the pre-screening, you can go. And I heard through the ring wire that hundreds sometimes are showing up at these auditions.
Yeah. And it's very common in open audition to have 200 applicants. It's very, very common.
Yeah. And then they're all paying that money and going, and it's, and it's just, it sucks because it's, even if you don't think you're going to get it, you also have that mindset of, oh, I need to get the auditions down and, get in this, in the routine. And if I go too long not auditioning, am I going to be out of that routine? It's just a repetitive cycle.
Well, and a lot of musicians seem to think it's a numbers game. Like at some point, if I take enough auditions, something will stick. But I think an honest question that a lot of us aren't asking, how are musicians supposed to pay for the 25 to 40 auditions that they take before landing that dream job? Like if we use numbers that we looked at before from Christopher Still, if we're looking at like $100,000 to $150,000 in audition fees and travel and costs to make that happen, where are we getting that? Even if that's happening over 10 years, how many musicians realistically have an extra $10,000 every year to spend on audition travel and preparation?
And it's almost, it's like affording a child at a young age. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of the same thing if you think about it. And I mean, you already have I personally do the 50, 30, 20 rule or something. And it's the needs, wants, whatever, my rent and whatnot. But I couldn't even imagine. I mean, you probably, they should be saying this, first of all. I feel like the first thing they should say whenever you get to music school is, hey, this is in reality how much money you should be making and saving to afford these auditions in the first place. And this is a reality. And if you don't like it, that's understandable. But if you do, just know the risk and then save up and, follow your dream and go do it. But I mean, again, these people don't know. They just don't know. And it's just so sad. And it's just such a reoccurring process.
Yeah. Well, and what's hard too is I feel like I need to say, just to kind of loop everyone into, we are not in any way, shape, or form saying don't take auditions. We're not saying don't pursue music. We're not saying don't take those orchestral positions seriously or pursue those too. We're not saying don't take academic positions. But we are saying that music school is not honest.
It's not.
That is the root issue here. They're hiding a lot. A lot. So, we have questions, okay?
Yeah.
First of all, if we're awarding almost 20,000 music degrees each year, what percentage of those are actually employed in music within 5 years, within 10 years? We have no idea, because the vast majority of music schools are too afraid to collect that job placement
They don't
data.
want to say it. Yeah.
Right. And also, NASM is requiring a lot of data. Why is NASM not requiring that data from those schools? That's a whole other topic of conversation. They're already filling out these surveys. Why are we not requiring
so true.
that?
Not the optional survey. Like,
yeah.
Who's
At
actually
NASM, we have concerns here.
Got its back here. Yeah.
Oh my God. So
And
that
honestly,
is question number one.
Yeah. And I feel like this is a huge thing. The only thing the only person benefiting from this are the schools, because people are just feeding into this. If they actually educated and actually said, this is the risk, a lot of people wouldn't do it. Okay. And they'd be happier off doing a different avenue of music. A lot of people wouldn't do it. And then a lot more people would have the opportunity to get a job. Yes. So it would be so much more beneficial in so many avenues for so many people if they just were honest and spoke about it and all that. But, the only person that would get the hit are the music schools. And obviously they'd have less enrollment, at least in performance degrees. Honestly, they'd probably save themselves if they just pushed other programs and other degrees and did that. But they don't. So...
Yep.
It's just,
well, and then the music schools want to come back to their alumni and ask for donations.
Oh my God. Where are they getting that from? Like, I don't know. I have a quarter. That's like what everyone's gonna be like. I think I got, it's just Penn State being Penn State, but I remember, I think it was 2 days after I graduated, I got an alumni email and I was like, girl, what?
I posted about this recently. I don't know if you saw my video on this. I think I posted this week. I finally got a survey. How many videos have I made in the last year and a half asking for music schools to collect data on job placement?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm all over this. I'm talking to schools that name about this. I'm pushing for this big time. Can we please take data and be honest about this? And the reality is, a lot of them don't want to take that data because if they had the data and it's bad and they have to share it, it is harmful, because as you're saying, music school is a business. They need enrollment. That's the biggest issue.
Yeah. A lot of people that run music schools are business people that have no music experience. And I'm not I can think of some in my head right now. I'm not going to say them, but they want the money. That is really all they are. And it's, And I mean, not every, most faculty, I will say, don't agree with that. And all the faculty wants is scholarships for their students and to support their students. That truly, that's, and that's great. But music schools aren't on the side of students. I really don't think it is. A lot of them aren't. No. I think individual professors tend to lean on the side of the students and stuff, but music schools aren't there for the student. And it really isn't. They don't care. No. They don't care. Mm-mm.
I finally got a survey from my alma mater, from one of my alma maters.
Okay.
And the subject line was...
Rate us out of 5 stars.
Pulled me in right away. I was so pumped. It was like, shape the future of our program. And it was from the actual college, not just the general university and general alumni. I was so freaking excited. I went to fill that out. It asked your location right away, so I filled that in. And then it asked your degree program. And again, it's from the college, so it has my specific MM or BFA or BA. It's music specific data they're collecting, which is great. So I select that. Yeah. And then it asks what field I'm working in. And when I tell you the disappointment that I experienced scrolling through that list, they used the Bureau of Labor Statistics list. It wasn't asking, are you even working in music? The arts category was arts, media, entertainment, sports was the whole category.
So what? So
I don't mean to be dramatic. I cried. I literally cried. The rest of the survey was them asking what alumni events I'd want to attend in my area and what swag I would want to buy, which is all a funding thing. I was so distraught. I walked out to that kitchen to see Isaac and I was in tears. I was so upset. So upset.
It's totally understandable. I mean, either that person just did not think that through. I don't even know why they would do that. It's a music school survey. Why can't you at least try and see anyone. Land in something that doesn't make any sense to me.
And it feels like when we have these opportunities, if you're wasting the opportunity, now when you go back to ask, what are the odds that I actually want to fill out that survey? I know it wasn't helpful. I felt like it was a bait and switch. You just wanted my money again and my
That's 100%
alumni
what
engagement.
It was.
It's really a bummer. It's really a bummer.
They didn't care about it. They're not going to look at the industry at all. They're not using it to oh my gosh, 5 people got an orchestra job over time. They're not going to look at it because like arts media, you can't. It is a category, but it's not specific enough, No.
And like
it's just
all of the arts, are you serious? Like, that's not even helpful either. How do I even...
Like, I'm painting now.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I work in nonprofit management for a dance organization. You're not even understanding where those correlations are. It's really, really frustrating.
There's no correlation.
I know that obviously if you're trying to catch everything, it's a long list, and I get that, but we could be trying a little bit harder.
Oh my gosh. A little bit harder. If it's a music school, you'd think they'd start with an orchestra job. You would think, especially a music school would start with an orchestra job. That's what they want to see. Because that's, again, promoting those people gives them money. So crazy stuff, honestly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so
really disappointing. Well, and when you think about it too, as we're talking about like the job placement and the lack of availability. So there's, we said maybe 50,000 orchestra jobs. It was not Eastman, it was actually the New England Conservatory was that document that I was referencing earlier. They estimate there's around like 8,500 full-time music teaching jobs in higher ed. Okay. So all in all, we're talking like less than, let's say like less than 20,000 full-time positions realistically, even if we extend that into like academic positions in more admin and recruiting and some of that stuff too. There's like maybe 20,000 full-time positions in the 2 main categories that music school promotes. At what point are we honest and say that music school is just not worth it? It's not a good investment. If those are the metrics that we're using, that's the success metric, and no one is achieving that.
100%. No, it's totally fair to say. It's totally fair. And the men in my comments would love me to agree with them on that. But like literally though, it's so messed up. Why is the amount of people that graduate with a music degree every year? There's so many years. I mean, since I've been alive, there's 24. And there's only 24,000 jobs. Like, sorry, not maybe. Even 20,000 jobs that exist. Maybe. But that amount graduates every year. And they're out in the industry looking for a job. Well, guess what? The past 5 years are also sitting around doing the same thing.
Exactly.
And it's like, it has to be at least 10 times the amount of people, honestly. It's probably 10 times the amount of people. And I think the only exception...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. I think the only exception is, I know I'm thinking, obviously, there's marketing, there's arts production and whatnot, but a lot of people also just start their own thing and make their own money doing their own studio or doing their own brand. But, how would we ever find that out? Absolutely. Yep. We couldn't. And it's just really sad. And I wish I could look back at myself too and tell myself that. I honestly don't know what I would decide because I got a full ride to school. If I didn't get a full ride to school, I don't think I would have done it, honestly. I would have probably just minored in Oboe and, went on my way. I probably wouldn't have a debilitating injury now. So it might have worked out, but yeah.
Well, and music schools straight up hide how difficult it is to actually get a job after a music performance degree. Yeah. There are other music degrees that are helpful, and there are other avenues. Yeah. For example, we were talking about UNT, and there's great music industry studies. University of South Carolina has done a great job. They actually, the music school absorbed the entrepreneurship program for the entire university, which is wild and so cool. And they've got a lot of really incredible things happening. They're doing like live event internships. There are programs that are trying and are making really, really impactful things. University of Tennessee has a musician's life course that walks through like different entrepreneurship and different options. Like they're bringing in, like I speak at that program, but they also bring in contract lawyers and recording engineers to give other insight into the industry, which is so cool. But as you mentioned, there's all these other paths like marketing that don't really get discussed in the majority of programs. How
100%.
often do you think, I wish I knew this before getting a music degree?
Oh my gosh. All the time. I mean, there's so many things I'm seeing right now where I'm like, oh my gosh, there's probably 13 little Kirstens in high school that I wish I could just, and I guess I am through my platform, but it's just, I never want someone to think that it's going to be easy. You know what I mean? And it's a lie. And so many people, I think I even had someone comment on my video one time saying, oh, well, oboe players make so much money in comparison to other musicians, but I'm going to be honest too.
Because there's 4 of them in every orchestra.
Sometimes it's, in my opinion, and I think a lot of oboe players can back me up on this that are actively looking for jobs, it's not easier. I think you can find different niches in very non-populated areas where, okay, they are looking for a part-time oboist here. They need more oboe teachers. Like, I absolutely do think that. I think the reed industry is incredibly could be tapped into. A lot of people need reeds. So there's some little avenues that oboe players do have. Again, I got the scholarship for different, a lot of reasons, but I think oboe helped. So there are things with it. However, there's still a lot of oboe players that are looking for a job. And I can't tell my audience that you'll have an easier time. I think it's very case by case scenario. I don't think it's one of the more, I think it's one of the more challenging instruments. Absolutely. It's such a hard instrument, but you can't necessarily say that any instrument right now is easy to get a full-time job with. It's just, I would be lying, and that's just not true. So, but I also saw someone say, oh yeah, like the principal oboe, I forgot to say that does make a little bit more sometimes. It depends on the situation, but someone said, oh, well, the principal of, I think it was LA Film, made $200K or something, like I saw it, and absolutely, that is probably the only person. Maybe Albert Meyer is making that much too.
There's like 5 to 10 of those positions.
There's like 5 to 10, and they're gonna do that until they die, and they're not opening up. So so it's just and that's the thing too. Like, these people will play until they die, and I mean, literally, I wish I was being theoretical. Like, they literally will play until they die. So there just isn't a lot of opportunity for younger people or just more people to find jobs, and it's just really sad. And I could talk about forever, honestly, because it's just I just don't understand how it's just not I just feel like over time the awareness is not there still, which is crazy.
Well, and it's created this culture because the competition is so fierce. It's created a culture where musicians think that more education is the way forward or is the solution. Okay. So I got a DM this week asking, should I get a DMA? And they kind of outlined some information. And in my opinion, what they were outlining is it doesn't warrant a DMA because they're not even looking at teaching. That wasn't even remotely the goal. I think, in my opinion, and I think this is probably one that you share from some of our conversations recently, I probably wouldn't get a DMA unless I was actually trying to go the academic route and get a professor position. And that was the dream. Like, that wasn't a convenience thing. That was the dream, because those are also very competitive. The majority of academic positions are adjunct, and they pay terribly. It is ridiculous. There's no benefits. Like, that's a whole other issue. But I don't think a DMA is appropriate for everyone. So in your experience, right, a lot of these conversations, because I know you're getting these DMs by the hundreds. How do you help them decide, like, what information or what advice are you giving about degree programs or pursuing music?
So every time I get a question, the first thing I want them to ask, or I mean, if you're listening to this right now and you are asking this yourself, what is your goal, long term? And I know a lot of people don't know. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, when I went to Penn State, all I cared about was what college I went to at the time. I was just there to live my college life. Little me had no idea. But I will say by about junior year, I was really thinking, okay, you know what? This is the life that I want, and I'm just going to go get it. You know what I mean? And I think college is all about figuring that out. But if you have a little bit of an idea, And if you know the reality of what you are pursuing, what you want to pursue, and how that, all the steps that it's going to be to get there, if you're fully aware of that and you're like, this is still what I want to do, this is what's going to make me happy, go for it. Absolutely. However, I feel like there are smart and not so smart decisions in that process. And what you said, DMA being one of them, I think DMA is definitely such a touchy subject because a lot of people go back to school because it's like a band-aid almost, I would say, from going back out there. And a lot of people stay in DMAs, I would say, until their late 20s, 30s even. I've seen people even older than that. And it isn't necessarily fixing things for people because they're putting
Right.
themselves in more debt. And again, I've also seen the argument, oh, well, it pays you. It doesn't. $1,000 a month does not pay you. And if you're younger and you have never had that type of money, I am telling you right now, $1,000 a month does not actually pay you. So it's just, I think they throw those incentives out there, and that's something that's part of it. But again, the DMA, all that degree is going to make you qualified for is a teaching job. And if you, again, for me personally, I know that teaching in a public school or teaching in a college isn't really for me. And I mean, I'm just not that type of person. And that's okay. If you don't feel that way, you don't have to feel entitled to doing that job because it's the only option or whatever. And again, like we said, there's a cycle of a lot of people that can't find those orchestra jobs or can't find a job that pays enough, and then they go into academia, and it's just they're bitter. Even I've seen a lot of people just be mean to their students and so rude and talk them down. They get jealous of their students if their students succeed in something. I've seen so many stories. So many of my friends have had awful teachers just be mean. And I'm not trying to scare someone out of that, but it's a cycle and it's very real. I can be so confident that there's probably someone like that at every single music school. And it's just not healthy. So if you don't want to teach in a school, do not go get your DMA. I think your time is more worth it just studying with someone every week. Go to a professor you want to study with and go study with them. And, you're probably saving more money doing that, honestly. And I think a lot of people like the routine of music school and just want to be in school because it feels productive. Safe. But truly, I hate to say it, you are wasting your years because when you come out, you're already like how many years behind in savings, how many years behind in, all this other stuff. And it's just stuff that people don't think about. So rant's over. But
spot on though. And I've had these conversations. I think something to contextualize this too. When Kirsten and I share these things, it's coming from a place of experience with a lot of musicians at a lot of different stages in their careers. And part of it's the platform, because you are a public figure at this point in music and you're getting a lot of these questions, people are telling you their stories and they're telling you what's working and not working for them. You're just exposed to it at a higher rate. I looked at my calendar, I think last week out of curiosity, back at my Calendly history. I have done 1 hour individual strategy sessions with well over 500 musicians in the last 3 years.
That's incredible.
Where we talk through all of the things that they have experienced in their life and what they're looking for in their career and kind of the goals and everything. When we talk about the fact that a DMA is a research-based degree, and even if you're going for performance, you're doing a lot of research and creating a thesis, and it's not just a performance degree like an artist diploma would be, or even just studying with someone individually for private lessons could be. When we talk about the fact that that's impacting you in a way that could be a waste of time from what you said, it could also be only aligned with certain career goals and outcomes. It's because we are hearing that en masse from musicians. We're not just pulling this out of nowhere and saying, we didn't get a DMA and so therefore it's a waste of time. That's not at all the purpose in the conversation.
Absolutely
in fact,
not.
when I was thinking about taking a DMA, and I strongly considered that path for myself, I talked to dozens and dozens of musicians that were doing things I was potentially interested in to figure out how many of them had a DMA. And it was less than 10% of the people that were actually doing things I was interested in the music field. So it's not the only path. It is a safe option if you want to just stay in school and have that support, like you said, or that routine. It is not the only way forward. And the one thing that if I maybe could go back in my music career and change things, I would have taken a break before my master's. I think going
Me
straight
too.
into it was silly. Honestly,
Yeah.
that was silly.
Yeah. And I my friends that did take breaks, I'm so jealous of them. I mean, it just, I think they needed it, and I think I needed it. I'm excited because I've never done that yet. It's been so many years, and I'm so excited, especially because I
Yeah.
switched my major, so I kind of have like 3 more classes from what I was doing. But yeah, that is so true, everything you said. And I also want to make it clear, because I think a lot of people, because a DMA, it's weird. So DMA requires you to have that degree to teach in collegiate level, but it's technically, I think it's technically a performance degree of sorts. So is the MM degree, and so is the BM degree, and BA degree, whatnot.
Yeah.
However, I will say the BM degree is a college degree, and from my personal experience, whenever I got my first, and I have a BMA in Oboe performance, it's a BM plus integrated. It's a BM. When I was auditioning, whenever I was interviewing for jobs in entertainment industry, my first job was professional content writing for influencers, musicians, and sports and athletes and stuff like that. But I was talking to a recruiter, and he asked me, hey, do you have a degree? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, in what? And I said, but performance. And he literally needed me to repeat it, of course. And I was kind of nervous to say that. And he goes, well, that doesn't really matter. You have all the experience. And I think it's going to actually stand out that you have such a random, but really interesting degree. But he goes, hey, because you have a degree, you can make this much money. And that's really all they care about. And I got hired. So again, it's but I will say, if I went and got a DMA, I don't think that would change my salary rates in the other fields of my life. And that's ultimately why I decided I was performance, and I was teetering and taking a lot of business classes. And I was like, if I switch to MBA in business, it's going to take me a little bit longer, but oh my gosh, the MBA, I just really wanted it. And then after a point, I was like, you know what, it's probably not going to raise my salary if I get my So I'm going to get my MBA, and this makes me happy and whatnot. And again, there's lore to that. But I think the performance BM is a degree, and you can expand on that. A lot of people even go to med school after getting their performance degree.
Yeah. Or law school. I've seen that a lot. Yeah.
Law school. Music law is a whole avenue that I don't think a lot of people do, and it makes so much money. If you really, really want to do it, go freaking do it. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. But I don't vouch for you to do the DMA if you aren't wanting to be a professor.
Yeah. Well, something that you said in that story of getting your first job too that I want to touch on. They said that you had the other experience.
Yeah.
Most musicians, when they leave music school, I'm going to make a gross overgeneralization. Most musicians have had their head down and they're only focused on the music for the entire degree program. And that's not good, better, otherwise. It's what we're there to do. Okay. That makes logical sense. But because music schools and performance degrees, sure, you take some gen eds, but depending on the school, it could be a lot less. A lot of students might make choices on gen eds that are easy, as opposed to choices that are relevant and supportive of their careers. That's one thing I wish I could impart on everyone. Like, if you can make room for a business minor, by all means, please do it. My minors were communications and political science, and I cannot tell you how impactful, especially the communications minor, has been in my career.
Really great. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But they're both great. Yeah.
Yeah, like very, very helpful.
100%.
But a lot of musicians leave their undergrad or even a master's program, and because music is the skill that they have, they are wholly unemployable because they have
100%.
no other experience.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm really glad you said that, because I also have to clarify a lot that, yes, what I do is an avenue, and music marketing is an avenue 100%. I was crazy in undergrad, and I did get I think I had altogether 8 internships through undergrad. I had 4 at one time. And they were all part-time, but I was doing a lot on top of my content creation. So I would say I really, at the end of the day, my experience versus someone with a marketing degree definitely overrode the person with the marketing degree, because I got the experience. But if I didn't have it, I would be fully unemployable. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just the truth. And, and that's just, I would say the only thing that my Oboe degree is really going to do is one, it's probably going to stand out compared to other people whenever you're applying to a
Yeah.
job. It's really, who else is applying with an Oboe degree. But also, I want to say, if I do apply to the entertainment industry or a record label, or, I'm working in that right now, they do like to know that I was a musician at one point,
Right.
because you really
Right.
have to understand musicians. And that's a whole other thing. There's a lot of people in music that only have business experience, and it's very hard to work with them and for them to work with musicians. And then vice versa. There's a lot of musicians who are getting into more business roles and they don't have any business experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not common because, again, like you said, it's unemployable sometimes, but some arts organizations will take people that only have music experience, and it's I've seen it backfire. Like, it's really not a
Yeah.
good thing. So I do recommend, please, 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 if you really want to integrate it, like, get that other experience. I'm really only talking for content creation, stuff like that. Marketing and stuff like that. But there's a ton of different avenues. I know people that they're actively auditioning right now and they work in STEM and they have
Yeah.
engineering degrees and they do that and they live very comfortable lives and they're very happy with that. But they also just knew that they,
Yep.
we're going to prioritize being financially comfortable out of college, and they balance both degrees. Again, I'm not saying what I did was easy. It's not easy. It's not for everyone. I just want to be so honest about that. And I don't want to push it to everyone, but if that is an avenue that you want to take and you think you can do something like I did, it's achievable. Go do it. So
Yeah. It's spot on. Everything that you're saying, I completely agree with. I think
yeah
the internet and content creation is also giving us a lot more access to build our own experience. You don't have to rely on an internship or another position necessarily to build some of those skills. I also worked in marketing throughout my undergraduate and graduate degrees. I got a lot of flack for it. Having other jobs and not just taking loans or not just relying on someone else to pay for my degrees. I didn't necessarily have those options all the time, but also, yes, I could have maybe taken more loans and focused more on my performance. Like you said before, like, I look back, I don't think, maybe it was subconscious. I don't think I was ever trying to be the best in the world at clarinet. Okay. I loved it and I enjoyed it and I really loved making music and I wanted to work in the industry. I don't know that I could have articulated that when I was in school. In fact, I had a hard time coming to the conclusion of, I don't actually want to take orchestral auditions, because that felt like the stick that we were all measuring by, right? And I was making a different choice.
totally.
So I got a lot of flack for that. However, it is the reason I have a music career right now. The marketing skills I developed are the only reason I have a music career right now. And so when I talk to my colleagues and friends that are working jobs all across the music industry for major, major companies and corporations and manufacturers and publishers, it's the same story. They had other skills that they developed on top of that and a lot of networking that they did. And there's one in particular that I again won't name names because I would love to have them share their story. But a friend of mine recently shared that when they were looking at finishing their undergraduate degree, they were trying to figure out what was going to happen next. And they were realizing that their jazz performance degree was only going to get them so far, and gigging was great, but they were looking for the financial stability. So they asked their professor, what should I do? And the professor mentioned this one company that's like kind of nearby actually has a social media marketing position open. Like, why don't you see if you can like get on TikTok or something and figure that out and see if you can apply for that? Okay. Which, by the way, kudos to that professor. Like, I think that was an out of the box idea. We'll
I love that.
put a little push on that one, but really cool. So sure enough, this individual did. In fact, they built a TikTok account to several 100,000 followers in fairly short order by playing to their strengths and posting, and therefore got the job at this other company and are phenomenally successful in their work. So I think that's something that we have to be a little bit more creative on and recognize that if school's not going to teach us these things, and maybe we can get some business minors and get some comm minors and things that help fill in some of those gaps. But the other thing we can do is take a little bit more ownership of that. Start a private lesson teaching studio, start a social media account, start making reads for people, like start something else that you can control and build the experience, because your entrepreneurship skills are actually desirable by other companies and corporations. They want more
100.
entrepreneurial thinking and more creative thinking.
I completely agree. I think whenever a company sees that you can sustain yourself on your own, it's very
Yes.
attractive to them if you are looking to do that. And I also think, if you're on the fence of, okay, I kind of want to see that, if I can branch out, but I don't know how to start, literally introduce yourself to everyone. Something that I did and that, I'm technically paying for at UNT is to meet connections. So every
Yep.
time someone came in at UNT, I'd make sure to introduce myself to them. I
Yeah.
exchange my numbers. I have a lot of incredible people that are now my mentors on Dial that I can go to at any point. And another thing too, if you're not feeling influenced by people, this was another thing that I think was blocking me in college. I was around a lot of people who were very negative people about themselves, about everything. And I know we all get to that time to time, but they weren't happy for me, and anything that I accomplished, I could have just won a free ice cream at where, and they were not happy for me. Like, that's just who they were. And it was so awful to be around. The energy really reflects on you. And I was miserable at a point, and I'm like, why am I so sad? Why do I hate everything? You know what I mean? And once I realized it was the people I was around, I realized, okay, I need to be around more people that have it together. And not only that, want to be around me and also just inspire me to be better. And once I was around those people, and I'm so happy that I'm around those people now, I feel so motivated and they inspire me. There's things about them that I want to do too. And I think that's something too. If someone is doing something that, you're like, oh my gosh, they do so much, I'm not there, all this stuff, don't get, jealousy is something that, comes naturally, but don't become envious. Just become their friend or just look up to them. You know what I mean? And honestly, that type of mindset has just always gotten me to where I am. And I also just applied to all these random things. That's why I worked for NASA. I don't know. I also just made sure to branch out. I feel like a lot of people just stay with music because it's a comfort thing. And it's also not looked at positively if you go away from music. And I just loved freaking space growing up. I watched space documentaries. I was super into that. So I would randomly branch out to stuff like that. I guess I had my hair account too when I was younger, but NASA was something that, I followed them on Twitter and they posted something and I was like, okay, whatever, this is thousands of likes. I have no idea if they're going to accept me. And then they did. And I have that on my resume. Just apply to things. It's so, and not easy, but if you'll get hit, like it's like throwing, but you'll get a hit. And honestly, applying to jobs completely remote, doesn't require travel, usually free. So I totally recommend it.
Yes. Yeah, a little bit different than the orchestral auditions that we were talking about earlier. Just a little different.
A little bit more like hassle-free, if you will.
Well, and we put all this pressure on ourselves to stay in music. But also, I can't tell you how many times, and I talk about, on this podcast, I've had a lot of guests that I've met through NAMM, and I talk about NAMM a lot. The reason I feel so strongly about NAMM and other professional organizations that are music industry organizations, not just performing organizations and instrument-specific conferences and things, the reason I feel so strongly about that is because it gives you perspective on how much larger the industry is and how much opportunity there is in the industry. It also opens those doors for you because you can go and you can meet those people and you can network and you can attend presentations and you can meet people that are working the jobs that could be interesting to you and learn how they got there. And a lot of them started, there's basically two paths. They either started as music majors who then came to some of these events or applied for kind of random jobs at corporations or built up some kind of random skills through part-time work and things while they were in school and then found themselves working at, a company like Yamaha. Or they were not musicians. And they also were applying for jobs at any company that fit their skill set. And they ended up at a company like Yamaha. And I'm using Yamaha because it's just so massive.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
Huge, ridiculous. But literally, these non-musicians land these jobs. And then some of them do find themselves in a position where they're selling an instrument that they don't play. Or they're marketing an instrument that they have no experience with. And realistically, if a company, whether it's Yamaha or any other music corporation, if they could hire a musician that had the marketing skills, that would be their first choice. It's the most logical 100%. Choice. But none of us are developing those skills at a high enough rate. None of us, obviously, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The opportunity's there.
it's an untapped niche, if you will.
Yeah. Oof.
Yes, that's so true. And I would even like to broaden it out. There's not a lot of people that just do music business. It's so niche, I would say. I feel like it shouldn't be, but not a lot of people do it. So that's another thing. If an arts organization sees that you have been actively working and promoting things with arts organizations or whatnot, it doesn't even have to be marketing. It can be so many other different avenues of it.
Yep.
They will find that very attractive, and it's a very untapped market. So I would say I totally recommend it. There's a lot of great programs too. I really like it too because my MBA degree is pretty much fully remote. So I can go get I've been working full time all throughout my degree. Just because, I'm in my 20s, I'd like to be doing that. So it's also just super helpful. It's a lot less of in-person commitment than my Oboe degree was. So yeah, it's really great. And I think it's great for the hustlers and the multitaskers. So
yes,
10 out of 10 recommend. Yeah.
Oh, I completely agree. I think something to point out as we're talking about like the time that you're investing in music school and how you're using the time that's not just on music, whether it's your gen eds or the work experience that might be building up.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about the return on investment of music school and a music degree in general. You can increase the return on investment of that degree significantly by supplementing with those other pieces and those other skills. The other thing that we're noticing in general in music schools is there's kind of two trends. They're either failing, they're either closing their music programs or removing degree programs.
Yeah.
We saw some degree programs get removed in the last year from Youngstown State. We had another closure this week that we were texting about.
Philly. Youngstown's not Pennsylvania. I always think of Youngstown being Pennsylvania. It's so close to where I live. But
yeah,
I grew up in Pittsburgh, but
good.
Yeah, University of the Arts, literally
in Philadelphia.
Crazy stuff. I saw that on a friend's story, and then my other best friend texted me about it, and she said, "Girl, what is going on?" And I was during my lunch break today, I was watching a couple more videos about the University of the Arts, and it's just so insane how these people committed or they're on their graduation year, and they just found out through the news that they don't have a school. Yeah, it's just
I saw a post on Facebook. People were saying, "I'm enrolled in summer classes there." Not anymore. You're not. It's done.
Imagine you're on campus and it just shuts down.
Oh my god,
that'd be crazy. But
it's a huge problem. I mean, I get it. Like we don't have the donors, we don't have the funding, and we've got these massive programs we can't support. So that's the one trend we're seeing.
It's
the other trend we're seeing. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, the financial management. What is going on? And I think again, if that doesn't prove enough that music schools do not care. Sorry, University of the Arts. I don't think it's music, it's arts. But arts schools do not care about you. Most of
there was
them
no
don't.
prior communication.
Exactly.
I'm sure they were trying to fix it up until the last possible moment. I also recognize that. And that might be part of the factor in the lack of communication, or they were trying to get through the school year without the panic and everything. I can see the PR mindset and approach, and I understand.
So bad.
Brutal.
Really.
It's brutal.
And I'm not
so we're seeing it's awful. We're seeing that happen. On the other hand, we're seeing some of the top tier programs go tuition free. Peabody just announced this year that as of next year, they're going to meet full tuition for all enrolled students.
I didn't even know that.
So, okay. Yeah. So there's some changes that are happening here. And I think that kind of split is an important thing for us to recognize, because it's also separating the creme de la creme of the musicians and the music schools from the rest of the horde, where those programs that are tuition free, Curtis, for example, always traditionally tuition free. Those programs, and of course there's exceptions. Like there's some programs that are very expensive. Eastman, for example, famously massively expensive.
USC.
Michigan. I mean, Illinois, there's some really, really expensive programs there.
Definitely,
the other thing that we're seeing, though, is that these really, really top tier programs that do have the funding and can build the endowment to support that are doing so and leaning into that further. So all that to say, there is money there. People are willing to donate that and fund those programs.
They are.
But at a certain point, if we aren't attending those programs, we also need to realize that obviously the return on investment for a free degree at a really top tier program is huge, because you're not really spending any money, obviously, except for cost of living. And then anything that you're making in your career going forward is a payoff for that. But the other issue is that if you're not attending one of those top tier schools, unfortunately, the odds of future career success in the orchestral and the academic positions does decline. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean you shouldn't go to music school. I'm not saying that means that you should like abandon all hope if you're not getting into one of those top 10 programs. That's not the point at all. But it is something to be more aware of. If you're going to attend a large state school for a music degree, then take advantage of the offerings of that large state school.
Literally,
and get the
I
minor.
Talk about that. Yeah, 100%. You're so right. Literally, that's why I push Big Ten all the time. I think Big Ten gets so much, and not just Big Ten. There's some really other great big, really big state schools, but they have so many resources. And honestly, I don't think I'd even be where I was without Penn State. I had a really good network actually in the arts marketing. There's like a little niche arts marketing thing. Yeah, and that was my people, honestly. They knew what was up. I still have a lot of connections with Penn State. I still help out with stuff and everything, but Penn State just had so many connections because there's 40,000 people every year that go there. And you just meet so many people, especially if you want to do business or if you want to do, honestly, any college at Penn State, you're probably going to be solid. So you just have so many great connections. The OSU people are going to hate me right now, but like I'll shut them out too. Go OSU. You guys have your connections as well, but I have like a couple of friends that went there. So anytime I see them, they have to like one up me about OSU. They're like, Kirsten, we just built a school. Okay.
Well, the funny thing though about these programs is it's easy to overlook. I think sometimes the bigger state schools compared to a conservatory when you're looking at these programs. The other thing that they offer though, in addition to well-rounded programming and the minors and everything we're talking about, they also offer oftentimes, more often than smaller conservatories, music industry studies, music business studies, other music-specific classes and entrepreneurship classes and skill set building classes that can then influence the future career outside of just performance. So discounting 100%. Them is definitely not in your favor, for sure.
That's so true, yeah. And honestly, the bigger the school, the more people that you meet. And you wouldn't even realize how other arts majors that you meet can help you out so much. I was in this program, this internship program, whenever I was running Penn State School of Music's marketing and their social media and stuff. But I met photography majors every week. I met graphic designers. I met fashion people. I met theater people. It's so good to be around those people because they taught me things and I taught them things. And it's just so good to have. And I learned so much when I was there. And that's honestly why I think conservatory obviously has like so many benefits for the people that really, really, really want to do performance. But if you're looking for an integrated degree, please go to a school that has so many resources. You will thank me later. So that's the thing that a lot of people say about Penn State too. They say, oh, you could get any degree from Penn State just because you have a Penn State degree. It's the biggest alumni network in the world. And I'm not just speaking for Penn State, just big schools like that have alumni and it can really help you out. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think the last thing we want to touch on today in our kind of planning was, as we're talking about the schools and what to look for in schools, we talked a lot about the culture of music schools. There is a safety issue that has obviously been increasingly getting coverage in the news and been discussed a lot more on social media a lot. And I think one thing I'm just going to kind of put as a ground rule that we've kind of already agreed on, we're not going to use names in a lot of these conversations because a lot of this is undergoing pretty significant legal battle going forward. But there are some concerns here.
There's some concerns for sure. And I think that's smart to do too, because not everything is, I noticed it's so great. Again, I'm going to say this. It's so great that people are talking and speaking out. And I want people to keep talking, keep speaking out. It's fantastic. I have seen recently so much misinformation from things as well. Just people say, oh, this detail, whatnot. So again, I recommend reading the articles. Those are very factual and that's the best thing I can truly say. Just be aware of like sources and everything and all that stuff. But I think anyone that's listening, I don't even know how they could be under a rock. So
Yeah. I mean, look, kind of the catalyst of all of this is that about a month and a half, almost 2 months ago now, there was the article that we're referencing that came out in New York Magazine and was published on vulture.com as well, that was shared pretty rapidly about some pretty horrific things that reportedly happened in the New York Phil.
Yeah.
And these things happened a decade ago. I mean, this has been a long path for these individuals and these victims.
Which is so sad, first of all.
Ridiculously frustrating.
Like,
yeah.
This just it's taken this long.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
The fact that they've already tried this case and somehow these awful people won.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Well, and anyway. Part of the culture that we need to kind of touch on, I think, because obviously, like I said, we're not going to get into like the details of the case and anything here, but that kicked off a lot of discussion of other situations that are happening. So now we've got all these people coming forward with really awful stories, some of them more public than others. Yeah. I know what my DMs looked like in the 3 or 4 weeks after the article was released. I can only imagine what yours have looked like as well, because I know you've been vocal on this with me as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. And I think music, classical music specifically, is, as we kind of hinted at in the beginning, on the cusp of a little bit of a revolt, a little like kind of Me Too-esque moment, where a lot of these stories are coming to light. And what's really hard about them is a lot of them are things that we're not surprised by. The behaviors we're not surprised by, the accusations and the people we're not surprised by. That's really heart-wrenching.
It's so sad, and I'm sure that both of us have experiences to why we're not surprised, which is really sad. Again, being a woman is hard in the music industry, and it's really tough. And I mean, there's stuff, I'm sure that we even experienced just talking about being on the music industry and on the internet and stuff. And it's really sad, and it's just so messed up. So that's just something that's going on. But I mean, even an allegation that came out recently, I have heard about it for the past 6 years, and I was waiting for someone to finally come out. But again, it's that matter of, okay, I heard it from 2 people and I saw this from this person, but I don't actually see it from the source. But tell me why these faculty members, who probably have heard it from the students themselves, who are legally obligated to report this stuff to the school, and some of them apparently have, these people are still teaching. It's just the most messed up thing. And it's not a matter of, oh, this person's such a god at the instrument, how could you take them out, whatever. Be so for real right now. There are so many other qualified, actually good people in the music industry. Be so for real right now. That's such a bad argument to me. So, and it's just, I mean, and I'm sure you've seen it too, with certain things that have come out recently. There's still people that are so scared about it because of how these people have controlled their students. And it's just so sad. And this is something too, and why I've been sharing a lot of this stuff, that I, if I know for sure it's a fact, just because I've kind of heard it from other people and I've kind of seen it from this, not usually secondhand. I do want to share it because I don't want a high schooler who's looking at these colleges, God forbid these people are still in power, and then they end up studying with them. And you wouldn't know, how would you know? No. And how would have anyone have known before we were talking about it? So that's why it's so important, I think, to that. And I'm so glad people are saying things.
Absolutely. Here. I mean, I think it's something that we have to talk about more. We need to get more of a platform too. I think what's really difficult, as you mentioned, is at this point in classical music and our careers and history, we do all have stories. And whether those stories are, whether they are as violent and physical and vicious as some of the things that have been coming to light recently, or they're just like stories of mistreatment.
Yeah.
And,
uncomfortable situations,
or like things
valid.
where, it's all important, and it all feeds into the bigger issue. And I was trying to pull up some data on this because I had, of course, done a lot of research, like trying to figure out what that looks like. And I think a really great way to frame this is a lot of people are talking like the hero complex, where we do put these people up on pedestals. And so the things that happen, because they're so good at their instrument, and we want them to be able to share that information and share that skill, we will diminish other behaviors.
Yeah.
And
100%.
that's a cultural issue. They're such a fantastic player that those unfortunate stories, we've only heard a couple of those. It's fine. We'll set those aside. Right.
Oh, 100%.
Or it's all rumors and we can't figure out where it's coming from. And so therefore it's not substantiated and we just ignore it.
I've also seen, this person's so nice. So how could they do that? That's a whole other thing. So, yeah.
And I've seen some really fantastic awareness and articles written even by some of our male colleagues and male presenting colleagues who've written articles or posted on social media saying, even though I am not this person and I'm not perpetrating it, I can understand now, as things are coming to light more, how my dismissal of stories, or how I've ignored stories, or the fact that maybe even I'm less likely to believe a story because someone is nice or because they're a good player, how that would also be harmful. And when we look at that hero complex, I think this is a really, just like looking at one piece of data, and I'm pulling this this is an article in a psychology journal called frontiersin.org. Okay. This is a pretty big study that I think was done. The title of this research article was done in 2019. It's called Orchestrated Sex, the Representation of Male and Female Musicians in World-Class Symphony Orchestras through ULC. So this is University College London was this study. Okay. They compared across the US and UK and Europe, and it was not just one or the other. Percentage of principal players that are male, 83.2%.
Oh, that's horrid.
And assistant principal is 64.82. But what's wild is when you look at the participation in orchestras across the board between men and women, it is increasingly more even and equal. So looking at their data, it says from their surveys in the UK, it's 44% female. In North America, it's 40. In Europe, it's 36.6 on average. Okay. So it's becoming more equal. If 40% of players are female, why are only 16% of principal players female?
Oh, yeah. It's so sad. I don't know. And I think all these orchestras say, and a lot of people don't talk about it because they want orchestra jobs, but we can talk about it because we don't want orchestra jobs. But
we are absolved of that stress.
Yeah, we'll do the talking for everyone that can. Yeah. But literally, I just think that these orchestras that are saying all this stuff, oh, it's a blind audition, like, oh, this and that. Well, I don't know, because I literally, whenever I was training to do auditions in music school, I coughed, and my professor, and I will say, he was totally right about this. He goes, don't even cough. They're going to know you're a woman. Yes. And I was like, that's literally, what are we living in? But it's true, and it's completely true. And shoes.
They can tell by your gait and the sound of which you walk on the stage. I know women that won't play blind auditions in their socks because they don't want to be heard walking across the stage. Yep.
It's just so sad. And it's just, why? Why are we living like this? I don't know. And it's just awful. And again, the 16% doesn't make any sense to me, other than, are these people all like from boomer age still? And we're just not, evolving, which, there's a lot of just old people, which that's a whole other thing. But I will agree. I have seen a lot really good, diverse hires recently, not only just women, but people of color. And, it's just really good to see that, because why has there not? I don't know. But yeah, I agree. And it is predominantly such a male-dominated industry, and it's just so weird too, because I've seen, I don't know if you've gotten this comment before, but I've seen people comment, oh, such a woman job to have, Okay, not really, actually.
People think that clarinet is a female instrument.
Or people
Okay,
think that oboe is a female instrument. It is not. Like, that's so true though, because
no.
I mean, you
I
don't
have
even
that data
really
too, by the way.
see.
I'll find it.
Oh, heck yeah, do that. I would even argue, because a lot of people associate woodwinds as
Mm-hmm.
female dominated, but
Absolutely.
not. If you look at a lot of orchestras, it's really not like that.
Mm-mm.
You'll get lucky if the flute section even has one woman. I'm gonna be honest.
Yep.
Truly, yeah.
Yep. Well, and
Mm-hmm.
it's wild because when you look at some of the data that I'm looking at here, in instrument specific data, for younger students, they'll say like oboe will be almost 80% female for under 18. Clarinet
Wow.
will be
Okay.
about 70 to 75%. Okay.
Wow.
You go to the orchestras, and by comparison, this is all from the same study that I just referenced a moment ago.
Yeah.
For clarinet, it says students receiving tuition, it's about, like I said, about 70%, a little over 70% female for clarinet.
Wow.
In orchestral positions, it's just over 20% female
See
in their same
that
test subjects.
the math is not mathing. The
No,
math is not mathing. I mean, I
no.
genuinely think there are more in high school and band. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was a
Yeah.
lot of girls. In college, it's very, I think in my experience, it was a little bit more 50-50 girl boy, but yeah, you don't really
Mm-hmm.
see that as, more girls than boys
Right.
with woodwinds. You just don't yet. And it's just a
No.
reality. And even though it's the stereotype of, oh, woodwinds are girls, guys are brass, it's not necessarily true. Well,
No.
guys being brass is very true, unfortunately. So, but like, that's a whole
Well,
other thing.
yeah.
And then there's also the whole issue with music festivals. And I think that's a whole other topic, even with how much it costs and why they go. And I think this even trails out. I never wanted to do music festivals, even if I was tutoring on performance, because I just did internships. And I think if I did music festivals, I don't think I would have been qualified for a stable career right now. I'm just going to be so
Yep.
honest. So yeah, it's just, that's a whole other thing. But again, there's a lot of issues. I think Aspen was getting a lot of heat for their diversity issues, and they're the most prestigious one, right? I think so.
One of them, yeah.
It's one of them.
It's a huge issue, and I think to your point, the festivals also perpetuate this culture where we're picking the top players,
Yeah,
and plopping them into these festivals to be the instructors, and if we are overlooking aspects of their studio culture or their behavior, for the sake of putting them on that pedestal, then again, it's creating these same issues and putting even more people at risk, because you don't even get to pick who you work with at the festivals. You audition,
exactly.
You get into the festival, and you study with whoever's there. And if that person is a creep or is mean or is rude, then yeah, you had no say in that. And it's a
like
really
a blind
frustrating
box
situation.
Yeah, true. And like some festivals don't put out their rep or their faculty until after you apply, which is weird.
Yep.
And also, tell me how every sorry to interrupt you. Tell me why every festival website says, "Oh, we have the finest players in the States." How does every festival have the finest players in the States?
But to be fair, a lot of them are recycling faculty between them. So it is a very prestigious thing. Those opportunities don't go to a diverse faculty set. There's not really a lot of diversity in that too. No.
Yeah, and it's just, I feel like, again, it's very similar to music school. They want these students to pay insane amounts of money for a program that they're actually sacrificing working over the summer and making money to do these festivals. And it's also the same with competitions. That's a whole other thing too. I've also seen these competitions. I think it costs more to go sometimes than the actual prize money if you win.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's a whole other thing too. But again, like the faculty members at a lot of these things, it's just, I've just seen a lot of just, okay, maybe one woman or two women. And it's just, where is that coming from? Because I feel like there's a lot more women in collegiate faculty that could be doing festivals in comparison to women. And again, I don't know the stats. That's just me basing it off of my experience, perception. but yeah, again, it doesn't make sense, truly. So,
Well, and it's wild because a lot of the biases are blamed on other things.
mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
um, obviously there's flat out abuse and harm, physical harm being done to people. That is
100%. 100%.
obviously what's being brought forth the most
Mm-hmm.
lately. Although I have seen some other really impactful stories of other kind of harassment and things that were being said. I think one of the things
Oh
that
my
I can
gosh.
kind of pinpoint when I think about this kind of flip that we just talked about in, clarinet maybe being perceived as more of a female instrument when we're younger, but then in the
Yeah.
orchestral positions being held more by men. It
Mm-hmm.
is tenure. That's definitely part of the issue, that a lot of these are very, very long held positions.
Yeah.
And tenure protects people, as we are
Bad
seeing in
people.
real time right now.
Yeah.
Tenure positions and union protection can protect the wrong people on
Yeah.
occasion. I'm not saying that means that tenure is bad outright or that the union is bad outright, but it can sometimes work against us in some
Yeah.
cases.
100%.
The
Yeah.
other thing that I think is a pretty big factor here is perceptions of what it takes physically to play an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of things that have been said to me even when I was a young child, like going to master classes and festivals, even in high school, and things that were said to me about like my lung capacity or my size, because I'm short, I'm only 5'2",
Yeah.
and things would be said to me about my size and how, well, of course you couldn't be principal because this other player, next to you is almost 6 feet. And of course he's got a bigger lung capacity.
That's
And a really good
crazy.
example of that is Abby Conant. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name wrong, right? So I apologize to Abby if it's
Okay.
Conant or Conant. I'm so sorry. Abby won a position blind in a German orchestra, I believe it was.
Okay.
I think it was in like 60s or 70s. It was a while
Oh, okay.
back.
Wow. Yeah, I
She's
don't know
been
the lore
very
there.
vocal. She's been very vocal, by the way, on social media. So you can find her on Facebook, and
Oh,
she's posting
I've
left,
seen.
right, and center about everything. She's awesome. Shout out to Abby. Thank you for speaking up because she's experienced this firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
This brave soul won on blind audition. The Wikipedia page on her and her story says that like after the audition, the music director stood up and was like, "That's the one that we want." Okay, like
Wow.
so thrilled with how the audition went.
Yeah.
They find out she's a woman, and immediately things take a turn for the worst. And
Uh,
there's court cases about this, and that's all been said and done. So I'm happy
that's
to
crazy.
kind of put a name to this one because I think it's more documented and settled. Also, foreign, that helps.
It's
Um,
okay. Yeah.
this ended up in the German court system because they demoted her,
Oh my
and
gosh.
she,
Oh,
obviously sued for discrimination. The judge had her go through all these physical tests to prove that she could actually do what the job was. They measured her lung capacity,
that's so
the
weird.
circumference of her rib cage. Like there were so many wild things that they put her through. And at the end of the day, they determined that being a woman or being
That's
the
like
size that she was
invasive.
or whatever, yes. But they
So
determined that
invasive.
she had rights to the job and she won it back
Oh,
legally
good for
in court.
her though. But
Yes.
why? Like, why would you need to go through? You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like, really,
Yep.
all of that for how hard it is in the first place to get a job. Like, oh my gosh.
Wild, just
Uh,
wild. So when we look at this, I think it's not just like, gender bias as in like, who do you want to sit next to in the orchestra
yeah.
always? There's these other perceptions of like, what does it take physically in
Oh,
order
100%.
to make it? And
I've
that's a whole
had
other
those.
challenge.
Yeah, I forget. I was actually talking to I forget who it was, but it was about the oboe being made for men, and
Mm,
it's just not the best setup for women, especially English horn. I'm sure a lot of people can back me up on that, but yeah, I mean, I think I do have a lot of hand problems. I'm not the
mm,
strongest natural strong person in the world,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, the oboe is it's set up a certain way for really big hands, and
yeah.
that's not something that a lot of people. I even have I use if you're an oboe player, you know what this is, but a K lire in comparison to a royale. And a lot of people my size say that it's so much easier to hold because it's just a
Mm,
lighter oboe. And a lot of professionals use it. I was actually talked down from using it before, and then I met some more professionals and they said, "Oh, I use the AK," and I felt better about it because again, it's more suitable for people that are smaller,
yeah.
and it's just really, and I'm sure a lot of instruments are like that. I'm not just saying the oboe is just like that, but and then there's so many situations. I remember I feel so much like this is an outfit right now. I am like dressing for the girls. You know what I mean? Like it's like a cute little dress, whatever. I could not wear this to an orchestra. I think I wore something skin tight to an orchestra rehearsal one time, and I was getting I felt so uncomfortable. I was getting so many, and you whatever. Men can argue like, oh, you're dressing like that way, so we can, whatever. And it's again, whatever,
Ridiculous.
Like ridiculous. It's just we're not there for that, and there's so many more instances than just that, and I'm so blessed and fortunate that it didn't get worse than that for me. Right. But so many people have gotten it worse than that for them, and it's just so unsafe and so not okay. And in a lot of normal situations, people get arrested, and in the orchestra world, that's just not what happens, and it's just really sad. Even if you're in the best orchestra in the country, you're not.
I think the theme of today is like there's cultural shifts that need to happen in music.
Yeah.
There are fundamental structural shifts that need to happen in music and music education to support people. And I don't know if the solution is that like NASM or the unions, or like there needs to be some kind of governing body that steps in on some of these more like safety specific issues for anonymous reporting and support if the people in higher education and admin or in admin at orchestras, if they're not going to step up and do anything about it. I don't know if it's something that we need to leave to a governing body. I obviously hesitate to say the unions because that one did not work out in my Phil situation necessarily from what we've seen. So that's maybe not a great answer, but I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how we support, maybe it's League of American Orchestras or something. Like there needs to be some kind of support here. But I think at a fundamental level, a governing body isn't going to fix anything anyway. It needs to be a lot of open conversation, a lot of support from our colleagues, and we need to hold each other accountable in making really significant, meaningful, lasting change. Not just so that people that are working in music right now have a better experience, but as a teacher, how do you send your students into that career field knowing what we know increasingly? How do you make that conscious decision? Like, this is a great thing for you to major in. Are you kidding me?
Like, be so for real right now. Yeah.
Terrifying.
And it's just, you're not helping the industry by saying that. Truly.
Yeah.
And I mean, so let's just say nothing that drastic changes. What is your opinion about the future of the music world? Like nothing drastic, nothing enough. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's hard. I think on one hand, I think we are already at risk, especially in classical music and jazz. Like if we're talking about dying art forms. Now, there are some pieces of data to support, like YouTube is saying that Gen Z listeners are actually listening to more classical music, and that is trending up. Like that's exciting. That's promising.
Yeah.
But on whole, for decades, we've been saying that our art form is dying. So if the art form is dying and the people that are in the art form suck and the culture is terrible and it's dangerous and we're getting all this publicity, it's just going to tank further because the funding of this industry and these programs, especially in the performance aspect, it's already precarious. So the PR crises that are happening with this too, it is going to lose donors and funders and funding sources. So across the board, if we don't figure this out and if we can't make it better and have a fundamental cultural shift, it's going to disappear. On the other hand,
I think it already is.
It's feeding into it.
Just aren't saying it. Yeah, we're in the early stages of the end, which is really sad. Yeah,
and we're also in the early stages of this PR revolution and the sharing of these stories.
Yeah, and
which
a lot of people
part of me.
Saying, sorry.
Part of me is excited about it. No, you're fine. Part of me is excited about it because I want people to feel like they've got the platform and they can share their stories.
Yeah.
It's also very hard. I read every single one that comes across my feed.
Me too,
Even though it's so difficult to stomach those sometimes, I want to know because I do want to be informed what's happening and how I can support my students and my colleagues and when the next one's posted and it's someone that I know personally, I want to have all this backstory of how we can support them and see what's working, what our options are. And so I think a lot of that's kind of education. I digress.
Absolutely.
The other thought that I have on this is the music industry as a whole, even if we separate completely out of classical, if we get more into pop, rock,
Yeah.
We zoom out entirely to just
Yeah.
all of music, especially if we're talking about like American music culture.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it is not, these problems are not just specific to
Mm-hmm.
classical music by any means, especially the safety issues. It's very
Oh
hard to be a
yeah.
woman in corporate music. It's hard to be a
Entertainment.
woman in entertainment in general. The
Yeah.
Me Too movement was started by the entertainment industry. This is a massive, massive
Mm-hmm.
issue. And while I think the the problems being voiced has made some positive changes in some other industries, and it certainly has brought around more education and more representation and more um, legal support for a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
It's a slow process. I think the only way to
So
expedite it is
slow.
to use, like we're doing, platforms
Yeah.
to get the word out and to start more conversations with people. That's the only way to make it go faster, and hopefully to also elevate classical music at the same time.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
I completely agree with you. And a lot of people argue too that, oh, like a story post, it's performative or it's not, this and that. And I'm just going to say awareness is just the most important thing, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're talking about your industry and if you're talking to people in your community.
Yep.
Please, like, if you have any type of influence or anything, if you have students, please keep them safe. That's another thing too. I would never want my students going to a college and studying with someone who just isn't a safe person to study with. And that's just an unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you said too. I think a lot of what's going on, it's a fire, and I hope it can get put out. It's so bad to say that, a lot of people are worried about the state of the NY Phil after all this, and it's just a really awful situation altogether. And yeah, I mean, I just, it's good to be hopeful and it's good to always advocate for change and stuff like that. But for the top 10 orchestras in the country, still a lot of them, if you think about it, even top 20, I would say, going on strike and stuff. It's just at what point, even if you make it that far, your job isn't necessarily secure. It's just a really
Right.
tough industry.
Well, that is all the time that we have for today's episode. As always, we want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in and supporting the show. Your feedback and engagement mean the world to us. So please don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. It maybe could just be the icebreaker that you needed to help network within the music industry. Thanks again, and see you on the next episode.